Who's the leader?
So we are going to have a few Rashis today. No, I don't think we got any Tosos today, but the big thing is we are going to hear about a new kind of Kohen that we have not talked about previously. Today, we're going to talk about the anointed Kohen, the special Kohen that was anointed for war. And now, why are we dealing with this? It's because the opening Mishnah of the 7th parak, which talked about what are different things that are that have to be said in Hebrew, said
war, the civil war?
No, wars in Israel, wars for the Jewish people in ancient days when there was a Kohen Gadol. So what happens is that if the Jewish people are fighting a war, and this I think is we're talking about a voluntary war. So then, although we'll I think get into that in this chapter. So in that situation, we said at the beginning of the 7th parak that when the Kohen goes out to battle, the Kohen anointed for war, when he speaks to the people, he needs to speak in Hebrew. Okay, and the speech is based on Dvarim Perek Kaf Pasuk Aleph through Tet. And I have the translation on the screen, but I'm going to read it to those that are in the room. So when you, Israel, take the field against your enemies and see horses and chariots, forces larger than yours, have no fear of them, for your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, is with you. Before you join battle, the priest shall come forward and address the nation. He shall say to them, "Hear, O Israel, you are about to join battle with your enemy. Let not your courage falter. Do not be in fear or in panic or in dread of them. For it is your God who marches with you to do battle for you against your enemy, to bring you victory." Then the officers shall address the nation as follows. Is there anyone who has built a new house but has not dedicated it? Let him go back to his home, lest he die in battle and another dedicate it. Is there anyone who has planted a vineyard but has never harvested it? Let him go back to his home, lest he die in battle and another harvest it. Is there anyone who has paid the bride price for a wife, meaning he's done kedushin, but who has not yet taken her into his household? Let him go back to his home, lest he die in battle and another take her into his household as his wife. The officers shall go on addressing the nation and say, is there anyone afraid and disheartened? Let him go back to his home, lest the courage of his comrades flag like his. When the officers have finished addressing the nation, army commanders shall assume command of the nation.
There might not be anyone left there.
There is a famous, I don't know whether it's a true story or an apocryphal story, that in Europe there was a play that would go around from place to place, and it would have these questions being asked, and you'd have a whole bunch of people on stage, and eventually all that would be left is two old Jews, rabbi kind of Jews that would be on the stage left. And in my version, the version that I heard of this telling, so then one would say to the other, they would be left with only one gun between them. And one would say to the other, here, you take the gun. And the other one would say, no, you take the gun. And then all of a sudden the gun would go off. And then they would say to each other, oh, we shot the other side's leader and they're all running. Yay, we win. And that was it. So that's the story, that I heard in connection with that. So in any event, those are the verses, and now we're ready to begin the chapter. And so we begin with the Mishnah at the beginning of the 8th parak, and it begins as follows. Meshuach Milchama, the one who is anointed for war, Bishah, and we're talking about the Kohen, and we're going to explain how come when we say Kohen here, maybe it should mean the Kohen Gadol, but we're going to explain that it's got to be a new category, and we're going to see that in the Gemara. When he talks to the nation, Bilshon HaKodesh Hayam Medaber, he had to speak in Hebrew. Shene'amar v'haya karavchem el hamilchama v'nigash Kohen, because it says when you draw near the battle, the Kohen shall approach. So Zach Cohen HaMeshuach Milchama, and this has to be the Cohen that's anointed for battle. Now, of course, how in the world you can tell that this phrase says, and the Diber Elham, and he speaks to the nation, Bilshona Kodesh. And so we see that it's got to be in Hebrew. Now, is that in fact a proof? No, of course it's not a proof. We're going to see that in the Gemara, and the Gemara is going to build on what it says here to develop the proof that Diber El Ha'am has to mean in Hebrew. So, okay, V'amar Aleihem Shema Yisrael. And then he says to the people, listen, O Israel, Al Oivechem. And it says that you're going to be against your enemies. V'lo al achechem. Now, of course, it didn't need to say against your enemies because we knew you're going in battle. So who else are you going to battle against? So the point is that you should recognize that when you go into battle, it's a very different thing, whether you're fighting people that you are friendly with on some level or not. Lo Yehuda al Shimon. It's not like Yehuda and Shimon. V'lo Shimon al Binyamin, or Shimon with Binyamin. She'im tiplu biyadam yirachmu aleichem. Because in those situations, even if you're actually doing battle amongst them, and it's interesting that it suggests that that could actually happen. And of course, in Jewish history, we've found that it happens. And indeed, now we're going to cite such an instance. Kamash Nemar Bayakumu Hanashim Asher Nikvu b'Shemot, that there was this was a battle between the Pekach ben Ramalyahu, the king of Israel, and Achaz, the king of Yehuda, and the king of and Pekach took captives, and it says Vayakumu anashim asher nikvu b'shemos, right? That the men who have been mentioned by name arose, Vayachaziku b'shivya, and they took the captives, meaning the people of Israel took some captives from Yehuda. Va'alma arumehem hilbishu min hashalal. But when they found captives that were naked, that had effectively lost their clothing in battle, they actually gave them clothing from the spoils. And so they not only did they clothe them, but they gave them shoes, and they gave them food and water, and they gave them to anoint themselves. And they gave them donkeys for those who weren't able to walk. And then they brought them back to their brothers by Ashuva Shomron. And then the people of Israel, returned home. Now, they didn't do this because they just wanted to. The Navi Odeid had told the Pekach that he needed to return them. And so as a result, they listened to the prophet and they returned them. So the bottom line is that we see in that situation that, when you have brothers fighting brothers, so then there can be a sense of mercy. However, we should recognize we, when we're going out and this, and the Kohen, the anointed Kohen, is making this statement, we're talking about a situation where you're going out to your enemies. They're not going to have mercy. And the point is to strengthen the resolve of those who are in battle. So then that is the first statement, is to emphasize that we are, this is a battle and your life is on the line. Al yerach levavchem, al tiru va'al tachbezu. Don't let your heart become faint. Don't be afraid. Don't panic. Al yerech levavchem. So what does that first sentence phrase mean? Mibnei tzahalas susim v'tzichzuach charabos. Don't become afraid based on the neighing of the horses and the glistening of the swords. Meaning, as you see the swords reflecting the sun, don't be afraid. Al tiru mibnei hagafat trisin v'shivat hakal gasin. So again, don't be afraid of the clashing shields or the numerous enemy, the hordes of the soldiers. So al tachbezu mikol kranot, don't be afraid. That's talking about the sounds of the horns. Al tartzu, don't be broken. Bimnei kol tzvachot, because of this sound of the enemy shout. Ki Hashem Elokeichem ha'olech imachem. Right? It's Hashem who's going with you. Heim ba'im b'nitzchuno shel basar v'dam. All they come with is the strength of flesh and blood. of Atem Ba'im bin Socho Shel Makom. You come with the presence and strength of Hashem. So now we're going to give some examples. For example, Plishtim Ba'on bin Iskono Shel Goliath. Right, so Goliath was the one who came for the Plishtim. Mahayasofa, what was his end? L'sov nafal b'cherev v'naflu imo. Right, he fell by the sword, and they fell with him. B'nei Ammon ba'u b'nitzchono shel Shobach, and the Ammon had this fellow Shobach. Mahayasofa, what was his end? L'sov nafal b'cherev v'naflu imo. Same situation. V'atem iatem Cain, you're not like them. You do not come with somebody who can be defeated in battle. And that is actually the phrase that we say when we try to talk about and we pray for the safety of the Israeli soldiers. We cite this verse in Devarim. And what does it mean that Hashem goes with us to fight? That means that the Aron accompanies them in battle. Okay, so that is our Mishnah. Okay, so
you said this?
I have. I'm looking forward to that. The celebration of the shul. Okay, so the Gemara now is going to again understand how it was, because we said Daber el Ha'am is somehow telling us that you need to speak in Hebrew. So let's see how that works. Okay, so my kamar, how does the Mishnah prove that it needs to be in Hebrew? Haki kamar. This is really what we're saying. It's not just that the word, we're really saying that there's a Gzeira Shava, meaning that there's another place in the Torah where the word daber is used, and it tells us that it has to be in Hebrew. Shenamar v'diber, and he shall speak. Ulahalan omer. And elsewhere it says, Moshe Yedaber v'Elokim Yanenu B'Kol, right? Moshe speaks and God answers. That is in connection with the Aseret HaDibrot. And so as a result, Malahalan B'Shon HaKodesh, Afkan B'Shon HaKodesh, just as over there in connection with Aseret HaDibros, Moshe was speaking in Hebrew, so too here, we're going to say that it's got to be in Hebrew. So now we've clarified the beginning of our Mishnah, and now we go on to talk about, who this Kohen guy is. Meaning, how do we know that this is not a regular Kohen? So Tana Rabbanan, we have a brisa. V'nigash HaKohen v'diber el ha'am. Right, the Kohen came close and he spoke to the nation. Yachol kol Kohen sheyirtza. I might have thought that this could be any Kohen that you want. Well, Talmud Lomer v'dibru hashotrim. After the Kohen speaks, we say that the officers speak. So when it comes to the officers, shotrim b'memuna, we're talking about officers that have been appointed. Af Kohen b'memuna, it's got to be some kind of Kohen that has been appointed. The Ema Kohen Gadol. All right, so we have a Kohen that's been appointed, namely the Kohen Gadol. That's a good person who's been appointed. Maybe he should be the one to give it. So dumya de shoter. The issue is that it's got to be similar to the officer. Ma shoter sheyesh mamuna al gabav. Well, an officer has somebody appointed above him. Well, what does that mean? So let's take a look in Rashi. Rashi can really help us here. So if we take a look, the second Rashi after the note that indicates where the Gemara starts, it's about 12 lines up in the Rashi. So dumya de shoter, meaning it's similar to an officer. Tirutzahi. This is the answer. This is not part of the question. Hashofet mumuna al hashoter, because a judge is appointed above the officer. It's interesting to think about that when we have, and this is true in this country, that on some level, even though police officers don't seem to necessarily have, especially the chief of the police, doesn't seem to have a boss. The truth is that they do have a boss. Namely, the boss is the head of the courts, the judges in the court, a judge in the court.
The police there in Israel, then in the USA.
No, the same kind of thing. Basically, same toughness. All right. Sheshoter asui b'negosh et mi yitzava hashofet l'kof. Right? Because the point is what's the officer's role? The officer's role is to enforce the law as has been instructed to him by the judge, that you've got to approach and to force to do whatever it is that you need to do, whatever it is that the judge is telling the officer to force. So so now back into the Gemara. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up. About 6 words into the line. Af Kohen sheyesh memuna al gaba. So too, we got to be talking about the Kohen who has somebody appointed over him. So it can't be the Kohen Gadol, because who's over him? Well, then we actually are going to ask the question. Well, 1 second, maybe we could say it is the Kohen Gadol because there is somebody appointed over him, namely the king. Kohen Gadol Nami, Ha'ika Melech al Gabav. He's got the king over him, right? The Kohen Gadol has to respond to the king. Well, no, Ba'avodaso Ka'amar. No, when we talk about somebody who's appointing over you, it's somebody who's in charge of your job. So the officers, even though they are they may be the top in their line, but they are still responsive to the judges who are in the same area. They are all in the law enforcement area. So it can't be the Kohen Gadol because yes, there's the king over him, but the king is not involved in various worship efforts. And so as a result, that doesn't work. Well, the Amos Sagan, there is another Kohen who is the deputy Kohen Gadol and is there to be available when something happens to the Kohen Gadol. So why not him? Why do you need a separate Meshuach Milchama, the one who's anointed for war? Well, the answer is Skan Lav Memunahu. Really, the Skan, although he has an appointment, there is no job associated with the appointment. Titania, as we have, and so as a result, we need somebody who has a specific job associated with it. So therefore, it's got to be somebody who's appointed for this position. So Amar Rabbi Chanina, Skana Kohanim, what is about this guy who's this deputy Kohen Gadol? He was himself a Skana Kohanim. Lama Sgan Mumuna, why is the deputy appointed? She'im Ira Bo Psul, the Kohen Gadol, because if something happens to the Kohen Gadol and he becomes invalid, he's able to jump in and serve in his place. So the point is that he's got until that happens, there's no role for him to play. And so as a result, that is not the person that we're trying to think about. So now what we've done is we've highlighted who this has got to be. It's got to be someone who has a specific appointment for this role, and therefore it is the Kohen HaMashuach. Okay, so Lemilchama. So Amar Aleichem Shema Yisrael.
Guy in the backup for Yom Kippur.
Yes, the Skan is the guy who's in the background for Yom Kippur. That's exactly right. He's actually in the background all year round, but we specifically mention him in Masechet Yoma, where we talk about the need to be prepared if, God forbid, something were to happen to the Kohen Gadol. So you're absolutely right. That is where he receives the greatest attention. Okay, so Maishna Shema Yisrael. Why is it that the Torah specifically chose to begin the words of the Kohen Gadol with the phrase Shema Yisrael? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and this is going to Rabbi Yochanan is going to have a number of teachings today, and this is the first of them. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, and I guess it's Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is the one who has his yard site is Lag BaOmer, right? Is that now I've got myself confused, but I think that's right.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So we can call this a Daf Yomi coincidence, as yesterday was Lag BaOmer. So Rav Shimon ben Yochai, we have a statement in his name. Amar Lahena Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. What this is actually doing is God telling Israel the following: Afilu lo kiyamtem ela kriya shema shakaris v'arbis. Even if all you've done, if the only merit that the Jewish people have as a whole, is that you say Shema in the morning and in the evening, Iatem nimsarim biyadam, then you will not be delivered into the enemy's hands. And so it highlights the importance. We should all be sure to say Shema every morning and Shema every evening. Okay, so that is that. And the Gemara now continues with the next phrases. So You have a question, Charlie? Okay. So again, that you shouldn't be afraid. So Tana Rabbanan, now we're going to cite a brisa that's going to highlight that that there would be actually, even though the Torah only references one statement of the Kohen Gadol, there would actually be two statements. He would actually speak to them twice. Achat bisvar, once at the border, the achaz b'milchama, and once at the battleground. Bisvar mahu omer, what would he say at the border? Shimu divrei ma'arche hamilchama. As we turn to Membet, listen to those who are, with these words regarding the battle, the chizru, and return, meaning he would introduce the officers who would tell the people that they should go back home if they were not appropriate to go into battle. The milchama mahu omer, and then what would he say at the location of the battle? Al yerech levavchem, al tiru, al tachvazu, al tartu. That is where he would say, "Don't be afraid." Keneged arba dvarim she'ovdei kochavim osin, and the four phraseologies of fear, don't let your heart become faint, don't become afraid, don't panic, don't be broken. All of that is because of the following four things: megifin, umiriin, tzevochin, viromsin. So what are those four things? So Rashi helps us out here. So we're going to take a look. It's the begins on the last of the Y lines at the top of Membet and continues in from there. Al yerech levavchem, al tiru, al tichvazu, al tartzu, arba azharos. These four warnings, keneged arba dvarim, are opposite four things, sha'ovdi kochavim hayu osin, that the non-Jews would do with ayim in order to cause fear for the Jewish people. Megifin, betrisin, they would bang their shields together. Mirian bikaranos, they would blow their horns. Tzevochin bikolam, they would yell with their voices. Viromsin b'tza'ala susehen, and they would have their horses stomp the daharusam and neigh. About tzuah charavos, but what about the glistening of the swords, the shofad kalgasim, and the numerous soldiers? Hein ikar hamilchama. That is not a tactic. That is part of the battle. So yes, it could cause fear, but that's not what we're talking about. What the Kohen Gadol is trying to do is say, don't let their tactics, don't let their subterfuges, let that scare you. Those are not in order to scare, those are in order to do battle. And of course, with God at our side, we can be confident that in our battle preparations and our battle efforts. Okay, so that is the explanation of some of the words that the Kohen Gadol would say. And so that's, I realize it didn't scroll sufficiently, but now we're going to turn to Goliath. And so most of the rest of today is about Goliath, and we'll see, there'll be a little bit after that, but this is great stuff. Plishtim bo b'nitzchono shel Goliath, right? So the Plishtim came with Goliath. Goliath, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, she'amar b'gilui panim livnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was very, very brazen. He would obnoxious in his way that he would approach against God. Shneamar, because what did he say? Choose for yourself a man and have that person come down. Vein ish el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Well, the brazenness was that ish is also referred to, God is referred to as ish. Shneamar, Hashem ish milchama. God is a man of war. And so the point is that he was not really, even though he was, the literal meaning of his words was that people should choose a man, but he was really saying God could even come into battle. I'm not worried. I'm going to defeat God. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So God said back to in response, Harenim apilu al yad ben ish. So I'm not going to have just an ish come and defeat him. I'm going to have a ben ish, meaning I'm going to have somebody who's not yet even a man. He's still in puberty. Shneamar v'David ben ish Efrati hazeh. Right? It was David ben ish, who is from Ephrat. So the point is that he wasn't even a full-fledged a grown adult. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Meir Bishloshu Mikomo L'Chado Piv La'oto Russia. That this guy Goliath, this evil guy Goliath, he said a couple of things that were on some level ironic, that he ended up getting himself in trouble. Because what did he say? Echad, Baruch ish v'yered elai. Right, choose somebody and let him come down upon me. So what does that mean? That suggests that he is going to be defeated because the guy's going to come down on top of him. So the point is that language sounds defeatist, and in fact highlighted that he would be defeated. Moreover, let's see if this guy is going to be able to come to battle with me and smite me. Well, again, he's suggesting the fact that the other person is going to be successful. I'm sorry. Okay. And moreover, he eventually said to David, am I just like a dog that you come to me with these sticks? Meaning referring to the what's it called? The slingshot that he was holding. You know, that's all you've got. Give me a break, David. And so as a result, and of course, here again, it says a lie in a way that is going to suggest that David is going to be successful. Well, one second, what about David? Didn't David also use that kind of language? The David nami amarlei, right? You're going to come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin. And that suggests that David was also saying something that was going to suggest that he was going to lose. No, because that's different. The Gemara answers Hadar Amrle, because afterwards, what did David say? Right? I'm coming to you with God, and so as a result, that followed statement undermines the defeat that is suggested by the earlier statement. But Goliath didn't have that. So as a result, that's why his statement is considered on some level ironic or foreshadowing, whereas David's is not. All right, so then it continues, and we're going to again continue with additional statements of Rabbi Yochanan about this situation. It says that this Plishti, the Philistine, namely Goliath, came every morning and every evening. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kidei levatlan mikriyas shema shacharis va'arvis. Well, we now know why that he would come in the morning and the evening, because what was the basis for the Jewish people to not be afraid in battle? It's the fact that they said Shema every morning and every evening. Well, he was trying to stop them from saying Shema, to impose fear on them. And moreover, he was there for 40 days. Rabbi Yochanan keneged arba'im yom shenitna behen Torah, because that corresponds to the 40 days that it took to give the Torah. And Rashi explains she'ichra Torah lehitkabel, that it took 40 days before we actually got the Aseret, before we got the Luchot themselves. That Moshe was up on Har Sinai for 40 days before Hashem gave the Luchot. So Nitan lo koach lehityatzev, and so that 40-day delay is what gave Goliath the strength, the fortitude to come every day for 40 days. And it's only after that point that we were able to defeat him. So Vayetze ish habenyayim mimachanot haplishtim, and there was this Beinayim guy who left the Plishtim camp. So what does this mean by Beinayim? My Beinayim, Amarav shemevuna mikolmum, right? He was mevuna, he was built without any blemish. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Beinoni shebe'achav. No, actually, what this is telling us, again, this is all trying to highlight the power of Goliath, that it says that it means that he was an average guy in his own family, that even though he was humongous and powerful, etc., don't think he was like the greatest. because he was only just average in his family. Just again, trying to highlight how powerful he was. Debei Rabbi Shila Amar, Shehu Asli Kivinyan. He was like a building. That's how strong he was. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, again, continuing with the statements of Rabbi Yochanan, Bar Me'ah Pape B'chada Nanni'i, that there were 100 stepfathers and one father. And Rashi explains that Bein HaTa'arovis Shebo Harbe Anashim, that he was like basically from a mixture. What does it mean? Because there were many men had relations with his mother on the same night. V'nis arva min ha'echad, and from all of them, one of them nimsa ha'echad, v'vekulan min afim. All one of them was actually his father, and all the rest were interlopers. And so, as a result, again, and we're going to see who his mother was in just a moment. All right, so Goliath Shemo Migat, and what does it mean? It says that his name was Goliath from Gat. So Tani Rav Yosef said, Shekol Dashan Imo Kagat. Right, that he was from Gat. What is the Gat? He was from a woman who was like a Gat, which is a wine press, right? And so, what is what is the case with a wine press? You push down on it, meaning that there were lots of people who pushed down on and had relations with his mother. Ksiv ma'arot v'karinan ma'arachot. That when it says that the caves, but we read it as the regiments. So Tana Rav Yosef shall kol ha'eru be'imo, right? That everyone had relations with his mother. Again, same basic idea. Ksiv harafa, and it says that what was the name of his mom? His mom's name was Harafa. Uksiv arpa. The only difference is a hay and an ayin. And we're suggesting that this is the same woman. So the woman who we're going to read about very briefly in the very beginning of Megillas Rus, in just, I guess today's the 34th day of the Omer, so in 2 weeks, or just over 2 weeks, so we're going to read about her, so we can call that maybe another Daf Yomi coincidence. So Rav and Shmuel have a debate, which is her real name and which is her nickname. Chad Amar Harafa Shma, one says that Harafa was her name. Vilama Nikra Shma Arpa. Why was she called Arpa? Shakol Orphan Osa Me'acharav, because everybody would sodomize her, which is the word Arfin, from behind. V'chad Amar Arpa Shma. Really, the other one says, no, her name was Arpa. Vilama Nikra Shma Harafa. Why was she called Harafa? So she was called Harafa because Shakol Dashan Osa Kahari Food, because everybody would crush her like a kernel of wheat. And so as a result, and how do we know that a kernel of wheat gets crushed? Because we've got the verse saying, V'tikaka isha v'tifros es hamasach es pnei habe'er v'tishtach alav harifot. And so again, this refers to, the woman took and spread a curtain over the opening of the well, and she scattered crushed kernels of wheat upon it. So again, that's how we know that harifot is crushed kernels. The Ibayazema, you can also use the following site, Mehacha im tichtosh es ha'avil b'machtesh, if you crush a fool in a mortar, v'soch harifot be'ele, you're going to amid crushed kernels of wheat. So with a pestle. So, and the end of the pasuk is, you will not remove from him his folly, meaning once you've got somebody who's a true fool, there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, all right. So the bottom line is that this shows that harifot means the word crushed wheat. That arba'at elu you'll do laharafa begat the yiplu biyad David uviyad Abadav. And this is a verse in at the end of Shmuel Bet, that says that the 4 mighty warriors fought against King David and fell by the hand of David and his servants. So Mainin, who were they? So Amar Rav Chisda tells us who they were. Okay, 1 second, let me just scroll up so that we see the bottom of this phrase. So Rav Chisda says, Saf umadon Goliath v'yishbi benov. They were Saf and Madon, Goliath, and Yishbi benov. And how do we know that? The Yiplu biyad David biyad Abadav, and they all fell in David's hands. So the Diksiv, and how do we know that? Or what's the basis, or why was it that they fell into David? So this is not to prove that they fell into David, but what was the source? Why? What was the merit or whatever? That Orpah kissed her mother-in-law Naomi and left her, but Ruth stuck with her. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yavo b'nei Hanashuka, the one who kissed the Yiflu, let the sons of that one, the Yiflu b'yad b'nei Hadvuka, let that one fall, let her sons fall to the one who stuck. Namely, the Ruth's descendants is David, and Orpah's descendants are these 4 warriors. So Darash Rava explained, Biskar arba demos shahorida arpa al chamuta zakta v'yatsa mimenu arba giborim. That why did she have these 4 strong children? It's because she had 4 tears from the departure of her mother-in-law. Because what does it say? Shneamar v'tisena kolan v'tivkena od. And she raised her voice and she wept again. So weeping again, Rashi explains here, we don't need to see it inside, but weeping again implies that there were 2 weepings. And since we each have 2 eyes, and she had 2 eyes, so there 1 tear out of each eye twice is 2 times 2 is 4. So she had 4 tears. And so as a result of those 4 tears, that's why she had the 4 great, powerful children. So now back to our discussion of Goliath, and it says that he had a chetz, a shaft of his spear. But the karinan is chanito. But when it comes to reading it, we don't say chetz, we say eitz. And we say wood of his spear. So Amar Rabbi Elazar explains, Adayin lo higiu l'chatzi shivcho shel oto rasha. That when we've given all these praises, all this explanation of how powerful Goliath is, we haven't even touched half of his power. So mikansha asur l'sapir b'shivchan shel rishayim. And this teaches us that we shouldn't praise the evil people. So we should not say things like, at least the trains ran on time. That's a praise, and we should try to avoid it because these people don't deserve any praise whatsoever. They are very wicked. So v'lo liftach beit klal. And 1 second, if that's true that we shouldn't praise them, why are we telling all the powerful aspects of Goliath in the first place? Well, if you have a good reason, then you can do so. Because we need to tell how great David was. Because if we don't tell how powerful Goliath was, then the miracle of David defeating him becomes lost. Okay, so that is the discussion of Goliath. Now we turn to Shovach, and Shovach is literally means dovecote. And let's take a look at what it says. So Bnei Ammon Bo ben Yitzchona Shel Shovach. Ksiv Shovach, Ksiv Shofach. His name is written in 2 different places, 2 different ways. Once as Shovach, which means a dovecote, and once as Shofach, which means suggests the word pouring. So Rav and Shmuel have a debate. Chad Amar Shofach Shemo. One says that his name was really Shofach, v'lama nikra Shemo Shovach sha'asli kishovach. And he was called Shovach, meaning dovecote, because he was built like a dovecote, meaning he was really tall, because dovecotes are basically big birdhouses at the top of a big pole. And one says, no, his name was really Shovach, and why was he called Shofach? Because anybody who would see him would pour out in front of them like a flask. So the natural inclination is to suggest that this means that they would actually urinate, that they would not lose control of their ability to withhold themselves. And but another possible explanation that Rashi gives in Rashi's interpretation of the verses in Divrei Hayamim is to suggest that he was such a violent man that the blood of anybody who even saw would be likely to be poured. Okay. Now that we had this debate between Rav and Shmuel, we're going to have another debate between Rav and Shmuel now about the warriors of Nebuchadnezzar. So this is from Yirmiyahu. So Ashba so kever pasuach kulam giborim. Right? It's Ashba was like an open grave. They are all mighty warriors. So Rav Shmuel V'amrila, and some people say it wasn't Rabbi Shmuel who had this debate, but Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Asi. It was the two of them. Chad Amar b'shah shezorkin chetz osin ashpatot shel chalalim. That when we call that ashpa, it's talking about that they basically they would make heaps and heaps of corpses whenever they would shoot an arrow, meaning that the same one arrow would kill many people. The Shema Tomer she'umanin b'krav. Maybe they were just experts in the expert fighters. No, Talmud Lomar kulam kiborim. No, the point is that they were almighty. It's the strength that enabled them to do this, not their skill. When they needed to do their business and use the bathroom, they were so big, these people were so big that they would leave piles behind them of excrement. Well, 1 second, maybe you're leaving big piles of excrement because you're sick and you're producing, for that reason. So no, again, Talmud Lomer Kulam Gibon. Don't think it was because of that. It was because they were great warriors. Amar of Mari Shmamina Haiman de Nefish Zivle Choli Ma'ayimhu. That if you actually have a situation where, God forbid, you're producing too much poop, so you have to know that you should be aware that maybe you're actually suffering from a sickness. Well, Lamai Nafkamina, who cares about that? So litrach b'nifshay, because we want you to go take care of yourself. So if in fact you are not, so the bottom line is, this is an important lesson, right? You should be careful about what you're doing and recognize when your body is not acting in a normal way. And if your body's not acting in a normal way, you should go and see a doctor. So Daga Belev Ish Yashchena. And then we have a dissimilar, now another dispute between Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi. This is a dispute about a verse that is in Mishlei, where it says, if there's dread in a man's heart, let him quash it, let him squish it. So what does that mean? Because that word quash, yashchena, can actually be, if you change that shin to a sin, yaschena can mean to talk. So Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, they had a debate. Chad Amar yaschena midato, you should actually remove it out of your mind. And the other one says, V'chad Amar yasichenu lacherim, you should take counsel with others, meaning you should tell it to others. So the point is that this highlights the two very important principles in psychology. If in fact you have a minor concern, I would suggest, well, then you can use the method of just don't, sometimes it's best not to think about it, to talk about other things and let your body overcome it and get beyond it by talking about other things. But sometimes when it's really bothersome to you, it's really important that you talk about it, that you find somebody who can listen, whether it's ideally somebody who's a professional, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. All right. But in any event, that is the a side lesson on psychology and psychiatry for today. But you are not like this, our Mishnah said. We go to war with Hashem. We go to war with Hashem. So our Mishnah noted that, God goes with us to fight. So now the Gemara is wondering, why did it need to say specifically go with us? Why specifically talk about Hashem going with us? Meaning, as Rashi puts it, why not just say that Hashem is with us? Why the halach imanu? Why does it have to say that he goes with us? So as we turn to Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, we'll just get to the Mishnah and then we'll pause for the day. Munachim ba'aron. The point is that God and all of God's nicknames are mentioned in the Aron. V'chein hu omer, and that's what the Torah says. Vayishlach otam Moshe elef l'mateh l'tzava otam. That's Pinchas, right? Moshe sent when they sent him out to fight with Midian. He sent Pinchas with them. Otam elu Sanhedrin. That's the Sanhedrin. Pinchas zemeshruach milchama. Pinchas was the one anointed to war. And the verse continues referencing Klei Kodesh. Uklei Kodesh ze Aron v'luchot shabo. This is the Aron and the luchot that were inside it. So we've now shown that is an indication that the Aron goes out to war with us. And then the pasuk references the trumpets, and that's referring to the shofar. So Tana. So we have now another brisa. Lo lechinam halach Pinchas l'milchama. When Pinchas went out to this war, he actually had another agenda. El Lipra din avi imo. He needed to seek retribution for his mother's father's claim. Now, this mother's father is actually a reference to Yosef, who is not literally his mother's father, but his mother's father, his mother's ancestor. Shenemar v'hamidanim makru oto el Mitzrayim, because it was the Midanim that sold Yosef into Egypt. And so Pinchas who's a descendant of Yosef, was trying to fight to avenge the sale that happened many generations earlier. Are you telling me that Pinchas actually is descended from Yosef? But Elazar took a daughter from Putiel, and Putiel is Yisro. My lab de Asim Yisro. Doesn't that show that they're descended from Yisro? Because why is Yisro also called Putiel? Shapitim agalim la'avodas kacham. Because when he was young, before he became a Jew, he used to fatten calves to sacrifice for idols. So no, Yosef. Really, Putiel indicates that he was from Yosef. Shapipate b'Yitzro, because Yosef was able to scorn, to pipate his desires. So that's the source of Putiel. One second, but we have a state. We know that the other tribes teased Pinchas and abused Pinchas when he killed Zimri, because Re'izem ben Putizeh, they were all saying, have you seen this son of Puti, ben Shapitem avi imo agalim la'avodas kochavim, whose mother's father would fatten calves to idols, Yaharog Nasimi Israel, and yet he killed a prince of Israel, namely, he killed Zimri. So Ella Iavua de Ime mi Yosef Ime de Ime mi Yisro. If the father of Pinchas's mother was from Yosef, well, then the mother of Pinchas's mother was from Yisro. And if Pinchas's maternal grandmother was from Yosef, then his maternal grandfather was from Yisro. The bottom line is Pinchas is descended from both Yisro and Yosef. And Daikanami, we can actually see this from the verse, because what does the verse say? The verse says, Diksiv mibnot Putiel. As Rashi explains, it has Putiel with the yud in it. Trey mashma. That implies two different kinds of putim. So pitam, that he fed the calves, and pitpate, that he scorned his desires. So shmamina. So in fact, we have now shown that in fact Yosef does come. I'm sorry, that Pinchas does come both from Yosef and from Yisro, and of course is also a Kohen. So he also comes from Aaron and Shevet Levi. So that is that. And now we're going to, when we quoted the Psukim at the beginning of today, we noted the fact that both the Kohen anointed for battle and an officer would speak to the nation. So for more on what each of them is going to say, stay tuned to tomorrow's daf. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
You know what time is
Thank you.
Mincha Marvin this Sunday?
Mincha Marav this Sunday, I will check and I will let you know. But in the meantime, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.
Yasher Koach.